Introverted intuition is it's kind of a strange function, really. I can't speak for how it works in every type because the introverted functions are a little bit more singular to the person and they're a little bit more difficult to comprehend. But my observation of it and the people that I've talked to that are NI users tend to tell me similar things to how I see it functioning in myself. In kind of grounded terminology, what I would say is that introverted intuition usually manifests as sort of a inner knowing of how something is going to turn out. It's like seeing where something is going. That's kind of how I would explain it. I think it's going to vary a little bit depending on which placement it is in your stack. But for me, NI is not like this inner world of thought. You know, I'm an ISTP, so I have NI third. There's a lot of different names for the different levels of functions. I just use the numerical one, it's easiest. I have NI third. And sometimes it can be a real blessing because it helps me see things very clearly of how something is going to turn out. And I can tell whether like I'm wasting my time talking to somebody or whether I'm wasting my time standing in line because it's going to be 2 hours and I should just come back because I go to the same store again tomorrow anyway. Or it can also be that I can see that the line's going to move way faster than everyone else thinks and they're all going to leave and I should just stay in the line. It's kind of like if you think about a hopscotch drawing on the ground, NI is kind of like jumping from the first square to the last square and skipping the steps. If you can see how that's the same kind of metaphorical representation or literal, I don't know what the hell the right word is there. For what I'm talking about, it's knowing how this is going to turn out. It's like, okay, well, I can see that if I just go from here all the way to here, that I'll get there. For me, since it's my third function, it tends to not work that well or not work as well as it would for NJ types that have it first or second. I think it may also, as opposed to not working well, work a little bit more realistically. Because, like, for instance, I'm not a visionary. You know, I'm not someone who has grand visions for how things are going to turn out. I'm not really a leader, you know. I don't really want to run a team of people and take them off in a direction toward the grand horizon like some NJ people do, because they have some kind of internal vision of how the future will turn out. My personal theory is that a lot of what makes me stressed, and I've talked to some other people that seem to agree with this, but is my third function. There's a bunch of people that talk like it's stuff that comes out of your shadow functions, you know, the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, that it's, you know, your 7th function, which is, you know, your trickster, that it's your 8th function. There's probably some truth to some of that, but introverted intuition, when it's in the third slot, tends to make me sit and think that I should stop doing something because it's going to fail, if that makes sense. It's like when I'm less healthy, I have less ability to look further into the future and feel comfortable with the idea that things are going to work out. So all of my, stress usually tends to manifest around a belief that things are going to turn out badly. And that, I believe, comes from my third function. Because introverted intuition, in my case, like I said, tends to be seeing how things will turn out. I think that I get a little confused about some of the terminology that I read in type literature, but it's not really a big point in this video. I think that it's a little bit easier to comprehend this function than some of the other ones, because I don't really see it as complex as some people like to make it out to be. I think it's kind of like playing a hunch, or, betting on something that you have a tip on. That's kind of what it's like. It's like you just look at something and are like, well, I can see how that's going to turn out. That's how I experience it, and that's how I've seen it in other people. I've known quite a few NJ types, in various kinds of relationships. I think that one of the big struggles with having NI in your conscious four functions is that you can sort of put blinders on to other people's thoughts. I see this a lot in NJ types, and I'm guilty of it, as are ESTPs, but I think a little less than me, is that you kind of don't listen to people sometimes when you have NI, because your brain is so focused on the idea that you know how something is going to turn out, or how it's going to work, or what the correct course of action is, that you can get a little bit of tunnel vision where you don't see a lot of possibilities beyond just heading in one direction. And like I've been consistently amazed over my life with my friends that are extroverted intuition users. Like even my ESTJ friend, like I have a friend I've had for many, many years who's an ESTJ. He's kind of also like a half a mentor in my life. And when we would work on something, I would see a way, my mind would kind of synthesize a way to do the project. And I would say, I think we should do this. And he would look at it and he'd go, yeah, but what about this? And it's something I didn't see at all. My way would have worked, but in that circumstance, his way might have saved us 5 minutes or been a little bit easier. And that's kind of the value or differential between NI and NE in some ways, is that NE is kind of like this explosion of ideas going in all different directions. It's like a million pinballs banging around off of everything, compared to NI is kind of like a maglev train just going down a track in one direction. And It's kind of a see your own faults and others thing, because I see this sometimes in ENFJs in particular. I've dated a few of them and I'm related to some of them for a long time. And they can be really bad listeners where they're just waiting to talk. And the same thing with the ENTJs. It's a little less evident with INFJs and INTJs because being introverts, they're not as forceful in their communication style, but I think they're also just waiting to talk a lot of the time. And I'm not saying that to be mean or cruel or critical of them. It's just the truth. When I've sat there, like I dated an ENFJ for 7 years, and she never listened to a single thing that I said. It was like the words were going into her ear. She'd sit and talk to me about the same thing for the 200th time, and I'd tell her, well, if you do this, it will solve the problem. And it would just go right in this ear and right out the other one, and then she'd go back telling me the same thing, or, whatever. It's kind of the problem with the train track thought process of NI. So I think I've covered this. I think you can kind of get a grasp on how that works from what I've said, where it's more, I don't really want to say linear of a thought of a concept, but it's more about finding a direction to go, as opposed to anything is possible. So that's how I see it. And I'll see you in the next video.